in John chapter 14, verse 23. You want to write that down. John 14:23. Jesus replied, "Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them," and listen, "and we will come to them and make our home with them." That's from Jesus. God's plan has never been to take us to live with Him, but for Him to come and to live with us. In this world that He's made for us. And listen, that is ultimately what heaven is going to be. Ultimately. It's God coming to live on a new earth with His rescued, redeemed, resurrected people in new bodies, real bodies, physical bodies that are built for eternity. That's what it's really going to be like. We're going to have real bodies that aren't infected with sin, and they don't break down, and they don't get COVID, and they don't get cancer, and we don't die. I told one of those funeral directors this week, I said, "Soon, bro, we're out of a job. Especially you." That's what God has in store. Right now, this place we called heaven is with the Lord. Heaven is simply the name that we give to wherever God dwells. Right now, that's not here with us, but in the future, it will be. Some of your minds are being blown right now. In the future, heaven is going to be on the earth, on a new earth. And if we fail to understand that, it makes our understanding blurry, does it not, of what God has in store for us. If we think about God getting us out of here and taking us into some sweet by and by, we try to get really excited about that, but it doesn't really compute for us. Something inside of us says, I wasn't made for way out there. I was made for this right here. Randy Alcorn, who I've learned so much about the topic of heaven from, he's got a great book called Heaven. Randy Alcorn, if you want to write that down, I encourage you to get it. Because how many of you have somebody that you love that's with the Lord right now? Probably almost every one of us has somebody that we love that's with the Lord. This book will help you tremendously to better understand what it is that God is doing here. Because when we fail to understand what He's going to do, it kind of leaves us confused and leaves us being less than eager to share the good news that we have with somebody else. We don't even want to invite people to come listen to our pastor rant for 30 minutes. Why are we going to invite anybody to sit through a long, eternally long church service in glory, right? That's not what it's going to be. The Bible says in the book of Psalms that God created everything, that the earth is the Lord's and all that is in it. And one day He's going to resurrect this earth, and He's going to totally restore this earth, and He is going to reclaim every inch of it. But until that day happens, let's talk about our loved ones that have gone on to be with the Lord, because that's what's on our hearts, especially at Grace Life this week. What about them? What happens to them? Well, right now, when a follower of Christ passes away, they go instantly, immediately, to be where the Lord is right now. Some people call where He is right now the present heaven or the intermediate heaven. Right now, when a Christian dies, they go immediately to where God is. And yes, we appropriately call that place heaven. Heaven is just simply the name for the dwelling place of God. But listen to me. That's not where your loved one, or you, or me, that's not where we're going to be forever. The reason is because one day God is going to relocate heaven to the earth. In the weeks to come, we're going to talk more, Lord willing, about this new heaven and new earth as we come to the final verses in our study through Revelation. But today, I know what's on a lot of our minds is Jim Horn and Suzanne Barnes and Tommy Kuykendall and Marilyn Montgomery and Bill Van, and the list is, I've lost count of our church family members that have gone on to be with the Lord this year. So I know where our minds are today. So So let's talk about that. What is it like where they are right now? We'll talk next week about what it's ultimately going to be like in the permanent heaven, but right now in the temporary, the intermediate. What's that like for our friends and family members who are there? Well, let me give you just a few things to know today. Number one, those who go into the present heaven go there without their bodies. You already knew that, right? If you've ever been to a funeral where the casket was open, you clearly understood their body's here. They're with the Lord. This is just the shell, the body that the real us is encased in. The Bible says absent from the body is present with the Lord. So that body stays behind here. But let me say this. I do think our friends and family members who are with the Lord right now have some type of body. It's not this body. They're going to get this body back one day at resurrection. It won't be the same. It's going to be changed. It's going to be perfected. It's going to be glorified. It's going to be sin-proof and death-proof and decay-proof. But I believe right now, even though these old bodies get left behind temporarily, Jim Horn's body's laying down there behind the church in Shorterville, Alabama. But I believe right now, Jim Horn has a body of some kind. I believe our friends and family members have a body of some kind, at least temporarily, in heaven. A few reasons why I think this. We came across this passage in Revelation chapter 6 a number of weeks ago. We talked about the men and women in the tribulation who will follow Christ, and they'll lose their lives because of that. And they go into heaven to be with the Lord. Their bodies are still here, but they go into heaven to be with the Lord. And in Revelation chapter 6, they're described as wearing white robes. Now, disembodied spirits don't have any need to wear a white robe, but they're wearing a white robe. We know that Jesus is in heaven right now with a body. So if Jesus is there with a body, it's possible that other people there right now have at least some type of temporary, intermediate body. I think about Moses and Elijah. Here's another example, right? Jesus is on top of a mountain one day, and one day Moses and Elijah, who have been dead and in the presence of the Lord now for quite some time, suddenly they're standing on that mountain with Jesus. They have some type of body because they're recognizable. They're having fellowship with each other. It's so real that Peter even says, hey, let's just kind of build a place for all of us to live up here on this mountain together. They were recognizable as Moses and Elijah. I believe if Moses and Elijah showed up in this room right now, first of all, I'd probably preach a lot of funerals next week because we'd probably all die of a heart attack. But that aside, if Moses and Elijah appeared in here today, I think we would know who they are. One of the questions that people ask, and I don't know where this question comes from, is are we going to know each other in heaven? Well, of course we are. We're made for relationships. God's intended for us to know Him and to know one another and to enjoy fellowship with one another. And even Peter, who lived 1,000, who Moses and Elijah were in that moment. Jesus tells this story, Luke chapter 16, if you want to write this down, Luke 16:19. Some people call this a parable, and listen, parables, you got to be careful about pulling out truths from that and saying hard and fast, this is how it is. It's a heavenly story. It's an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. I'm not sure that what Jesus is telling us in Luke 16 is a parable. I think it actually may be a true account. The reason for that is, unlike any other parable, Jesus names names, specific people here in Luke chapter 16. Beginning in verse 19, Jesus says, there was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. At his gate was laid a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores, and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. The time came when the beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was in torment, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. So he called to him, Father Abraham, have pity on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this fire. But Abraham replied, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he's comforted here, and you're in agony. And besides all this, between us and you, a great chasm has been set in place, so that those who want to go from here to you cannot, nor can anyone cross over from there to us. He answered, Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my family, For I have 5 brothers. Let him warn them, so that they will not also come to this place of torment. Jesus is describing this scene of people who are in the eternal state at that moment. And I want you